Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our live event tonight. We will start off with our online patient meeting, and we have another very important topic to discuss. And I am your host, as always. My name is Caroline. So please let me know that you can hear me. And with us today is Kelly Da Silva. Hi, Kelly. How are you? And I hope you can hear me as well.
Yep, I can hear you. It's all good. Hello.
Perfect. Thank you so much for confirming that. We are happy to have you here with us today, and we will start with the most common questions, okay? And of course, then it will be time for your questions. So, as always, remember that you can put all of your questions in the chat section so that Kelly can answer them for you. And before that, as always, I want to remind everyone that all those events, as you know, we have started the events to support you throughout this uncertainty that we are having right now. It's getting better, but we know that some of you are still not able to simply proceed with your treatment. Therefore, we are here every single day to support you however we can. And those events has been brought to you thanks to our ambassadors and partners as well. You can see them right here as well. So as always, huge thanks for them and for their support. And as I've already mentioned, with us today is Kelly Da Silva, and she is actually the founder of that code. Which is a child support organization. And Kelly will talk today about stopping IVF treatment, knowing when enough is enough. This is definitely a hard decision, hard topic. And Kelly, I'm sure, will be able to give you some tips. She will be able to just simply help you as much as possible. And of course, as I mentioned, we will start with Kelly's introduction. Then it will be time for most common questions, and then your questions will follow right after. So prepare your questions so that Kelly can help you out. Okay, that will be it from me for now. And Kelly, hope you are having a good day and you are ready to start with your introduction.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for everybody joining us this evening. It's great to have so many of you online listening in, which is absolutely great. Like Caroline just said, if there's any questions or any comments as I'm going through the questions, or if anything pops up, if you just want to pop any questions in the chat at the bottom of the screen, and then we can answer those. But basically, I wanted to talk to you today about the decision to stop IVF. Now, I'm an ex-patient. I had IVF treatment, and when we go into IVF, thinking about coming out at the end of it with not having a child is not something that we or many people actually even consider. It's we go in with the hope, the dreams that we'll end up with the baby, the family, you know, that we've put all our effort into. And sadly, for some people, and it was the case for me, that actually my treatment wasn't successful. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about my journey and what's that, how that's led me to start up the Ducat Childless Support Organisation, and how I found that the process really, both of coming to terms with not having children, but also how you can still live a happy and fulfilling life without children. So I'm going to be talking about all the different bits and pieces around that. So if there's anything that really springs to mind that you just think, you know, whilst I'm on, please ask me anything that you want to do. But we have got some frequently asked questions to begin with. So I'll run through those. The first one will be me talking about my journey and my story, and then talking you through some of the other common questions. So Caroline, when you're ready, we can have the first question.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kelly. And yes, let's go ahead with the question number one. So, what was your fertility journey?
So we only have an hour, so I'm going to keep this fairly brief. My journey was nearly 10 years and started trying to conceive in my mid-20s. Soon after about a year, recognised that there were some issues. So we had some general IVF and some general fertility procedures and tests done, which revealed that everything, they seemed quite normal, and there was nothing that came up that that was raising any issues. So from the very beginning, I was classified as unexplained infertility. And I know for many people where your fertility is due to unexplained infertility, that can be quite challenging. In some ways, it can be really nice to have something that you can actually work with and fix. And for me, that wasn't something that I had. So I was quickly under the NHS popped onto Clomid, which increases ovulation. So I had 6 rounds of Clomid under the NHS. That was the first 5 cycles were unsuccessful of that, and on the 6th cycle of the Clomid, I did actually become pregnant, but sadly miscarried at 11 weeks. So obviously that was really difficult to deal with, but trying to think about the positives, obviously I'd become pregnant, so I was just literally trying to hold on to any bit of hope there was out there. After that was unsuccessful, at the time, it was just recommended that we had 6 cycles. So we were then progressed on to IUI, which is the artificial insemination. We had 3 rounds of the IUI, which again were all unsuccessful. So we were due to start IVF. So we should have been entitled to 1 round on the NHS. But as we're about to start it, our CCG had run out of funding. So we decided to pay privately because this up to that point had been about 3 years under the NHS. You can be in the system quite a while before you start to get moving, especially when you're at the younger age. I was under 30 and they just thought it was just going to happen. So we decided to go privately. I had my first cycle of IVF, which was very scary. When you're new to it, the first cycle just is very, stressful. And I think the fact that we'd already been in the system for quite a few years, it had already started to impact my mental health. The whole emotional impact of the treatment was quite significant, and the whole fertility journey. So I had my first IVF cycle, and that was unsuccessful. So at that point, I just felt that there was something that wasn't quite right. Obviously, all my tests had previously said unexplained. So we then went on to have some genetic testing, immune testing, which did show that I had slightly elevated natural killer cells, which gave me, again, a little bit more hope that we could change something for the second cycle. So on the second cycle, we added steroids, immune suppressants into the cycle, and I got a positive pregnancy test, which was amazing. Everything was going really well. I had all the early pregnancy symptoms. But then when I went for my 6-week viability scan, unfortunately, that proved the pregnancy wasn't viable. So that was the second miscarriage that I had during that time. And we did have from that cycle actually 4 really good grade blastocysts which were frozen. So again, as hard as it was, and it was an awful time, I felt hopeful that there was the frozen embryos that we could put back. Obviously the frozen egg transfer is a lot more, it's less invasive in terms of a procedure. So we went on to have the two frozen embryos put back with intralipids, which again, suppressing the immune system. It's with the egg yolk, but unfortunately that didn't work. It wasn't successful. And this happened over a number of years, and by the time I'd got to that transfer and it not been successful, I was just absolutely exhausted with it all, and just needed a complete break from it. So I don't know where people are at who are listening in terms of where you're at in your cycles or on your journey, but for me, having that break for a year was, I know some people don't have time, but it really felt like it was the best thing to do. It had been nearly 8 years and started to take over my life completely. So it had just become Project Baby, and yeah, it was really, really tricky. So we had a year out just to kind of do some other things, try to not think about it, and decided that we'd have the last two frozen embryos back. But again, because of the emotional impact of it, I was really reluctant to have those back, knowing what I was going to be in for, and the whole roller coaster of emotions that were going to come up. So on that last cycle, we didn't tell anybody about the treatment. And on the previous ones we had. So not only dealing with your own disappointment, but you've got everybody else's disappointment, which can be really hard. So we didn't tell anybody. I did it in the summer holidays because previously I was a teacher. And sadly, that was unsuccessful as well. And like I say, 9 years on from trying, we'd just decided that emotionally, physically, we were just done. And people asked me, how did you know when enough was enough? And inside, you just know. We'd given ourselves a limit. We'd spent nearly £20,000 on treatment, and it just seemed that it was just holding us back from moving forward. And as difficult as that really was, and making that decision, and we'll talk about the challenges and things like that, um, it was a relief in some ways to let it go. But once we decided that that was it, I thought logically we could just get on with our lives, but obviously the reality of it was quite difficult. So we'll talk about some of the challenges that came up with that. So yeah, 6 cycles of Clomid, 3 IUI, 2 fresh cycles, 2 frozen. It was a lot to go through. So that's my journey in terms of kind of what we went through. So the second question, I don't know if you want to press on with the next one.
Thank you so much, Kelly, for sharing. Yes, I mean, this is definitely a tough, but thank you so much for sharing. There are so many people out there that have gone through some similar, possibly, situations. So there's the next question here. How did you know when to stop?
So for us, we listened to the consultant at the time, and he'd, because of my age and things like that, he said if it's going to work, we'd recommend 3 cycles of treatment. We didn't expect to get the frozen embryos, so for us, the 2 fresh cycles and the 2 frozen cycles, in addition to everything else that we'd been through, felt like we'd done enough. I didn't feel like, well, I think, it was more the emotional side. I just thought I just cannot put myself through, or my husband or family, friends through this, because with that, I suffered quite a lot with the anxiety and depression, which impacted work, being at work, general mood, not sleeping, and all the symptoms that come along with that. So for me, it was a case of we'd listened logically to what the consultant had said. We'd tried, and I think it was, for me, it was that gut reaction that I just knew. And the people that I speak to, and they'll say, how do you know? And I just say, you just know. And when people have come back to me and they've said, yeah, we're there. And it's really difficult because, like I said at the beginning, you don't go into treatment expecting to come out. Well, I didn't, because of all the miracle babies stories that you hear on the media without a child, and a baby. So it's really hard to let go of that dream. And for me, it wasn't just letting go of a dream, but it was kind of a life that I thought I was going to have as being a mum. And there was a lot of sadness around that, again, which I'll talk about in terms of some of the challenges. So for me, it was kind of, financially, we'd spent a lot of money. Emotionally, we'd been through it, and it was just a case of thinking, you know, there's got to be more than this, because it was, yeah, really difficult. So I I don't know if you want to go to the next question, unless there's any some questions popping up at the bottom. I don't know whether you want to ask those, Caroline, whilst we're talking about stopping treatment before we move on to the next question.
Yes, we will simply go for the questions after those questions.
Yeah,
Okay, we will have
that's
a Q&A
yeah,
session.
that's absolutely fine.
Perfect, thank you. So what were the challenges once you decided enough was enough?
So the challenges for me, there was a number. The first one was me thinking, now what? Now what do I do after I spent all this time? It had become my identity. And we'll talk about support and things. But I wasn't able to almost say who I was without saying I'm Kelly Da Silva, and I can't have children. It'd become everything. This project baby, like I said before, and it was really, really, really difficult to think and imagine what life could possibly be like. And like I said, deciding enough was enough, or some people would say to me, oh, so you've given up then? And I would say, no, I've not given up. And that's why I chose the title of the presentation today, or the Q&A, is decided enough is enough, because I don't feel like I gave up. I decided that there was only so much that I could actually deal with. So for me, it was thinking, okay, logically we've decided that's it. But I remember just after that failed cycle, my husband had to go away, and I had 3 or 4 days at home on my own. And it was just what I needed, because I really felt like I wallowed in those 4 days. And looking back now and speaking to the counsellors, it was definitely grieving. Really, it pushed me into a really dark place, actually. Like I say, logic, we thought, well, we could just get on with our lives now. But actually, the reality of it was quite different, because for the last nearly 10 years, everything had been about having a family. So it took a while to kind of adjust and to process that loss, really. Because, like I said before, it was a loss of a life I thought I was going to have. So it's all that grief that's wrapped up in it. I felt incredibly sad, like there was just a big cloud of sadness above me, and found it really, it must have been really draining for friends and family, because I was quite open about the situation. But because I didn't know anybody else going through it, it was, I just felt like I was completely alone and isolated with it. So that was really challenging as well, feeling like I was the only person in my group of friends that it wasn't working for. So yeah, those, I would say, those were the main challenges. It was initially, how am I going to get through these next, well, some days it was, how am I going to get through this next day, and then it was literally step by step, how can the next 3 months, to then get me to a place where today, 5 years ago, set up the Dovecote Childless Support Organisation, and found that just a huge relief. So yeah, so I think we can go to the next question.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So, what support did you find helpful for dealing with involuntary childlessness?
Okay, so initially, I would say I had a really good relationship with the counsellor at my clinic, so that was super helpful. And the clinic did offer treatment as part of our treatment IVF process, so I was able to continue with that. So that was great. But for me, when I came out of the counselling, I don't know if it's the same for other people. I felt like I was on my own again. So I think it was looking around to say, okay, well, there's only so much that the clinic can do once you've decided that enough's enough. And it, for me, it was trying to look to see where else I could get support from. So I kind of did a load of searching on the internet. All the groups that I'd been in online, the forums, had ended up with me being the only one that didn't have a baby. Even those people that had cycled at the same times and things. So I felt like I was the only one that it never worked for, which I think is relatable to some people as well, who are struggling with infertility and failed IVF cycles. Um, so for me, it was really important for me to find other people so I didn't feel alone. And I would say that was kind of one of the biggest things that I did to help my own sanity and mental health was I managed to find there's More to Life, which is part of Fertility Network. And that was great. But I found that a lot of the ladies on there who were involuntarily childless were actually older ladies, not my age, who were younger and becoming to it at an earlier stage. So that was when I decided to set up the Dovecote Childless Support Organisation and started out just with a few people, just putting my own story out there. On Facebook and on my social media channels, just saying, look, I've set up this organisation and Facebook group for people who have reached the end of their journey and aren't considering any kind of other parenting options, because that was the big thing that I found, was that once you said, okay, we're not having children, it was, why don't you just adopt? And I really wanted to create a safe space for people who had come to the end of their journey and didn't want that as a trigger. You just don't want to be asked that. It isn't right for everybody, and at the time it's something that we weren't considering. And so yeah, that for me, it was kind of finding that tribe, if you like, that sanctuary of people who really understood and were in the same position. But also for me, I found something that was really useful was something called the emotional freedom technique, or tapping. So this is using, I'd had various different therapies through my infertility journey, and tapping is where it's a bit like acupuncture without the needle. So you're tapping on different parts of the face and the hand, and it just shifts a lot of the energy around the sadness. And for me, that was something that when I went to see the practitioner, somebody had recommended it for me. Um, I said earlier that I couldn't say who I was without saying, and I can't have children. And it was that sense of identity and sadness that I was describing, that I was able to shift, because it really felt prickly for a while, until I actually had the EFT, or tapping. So I became a practitioner in it, so I can now support other people who might find it useful. And it generally just makes you feel a lot more relaxed. It shifts a lot of the negative energy around it. So I wasn't able to talk about my journey without getting upset about it. And once I'd gone through the emotional freedom technique and tapping, find that I could, it was almost like, well, that bit's kind of gone. So it's a bit magical, really. It feels quite magical, but the EFT definitely helped. So yeah, those, I would say those were the key things for me initially.
Thank you so much once again. And this will be our last question from those most common ones. Therefore, I would like to remind everyone we have some questions ready, but remember, you can type in your questions so that Kelly can help you out a bit as well. The question is, do you feel you can live a happy and fulfilling life without children?
So initially, I would have 5 years ago, once I came, or 5.5 years ago, when I came to the end of the IVF, I just didn't see how I could live without children, let alone having a happy and fulfilling life. Just didn't feel like there was any future if I couldn't have children, and that's genuine. Like I talked about the emotions that I've dealt with, and it was quite a dark place. But I think over time, and it didn't. I wanted a magic fix for this. I remember googling, how long is it, how long am I going to be feeling like this, and dealing with involuntary childlessness, and it was, just couldn't find the answers. And it was a case of having to process that grief. I think, first of all, realizing that I wasn't going mad, and the counselor helped me realize that, when I was like, I'm finding it really difficult to go to work. And she said, well, everything you've been through, I'm not surprised you're finding it difficult. Yeah, I felt like I was a huge failure and felt incredibly guilty that I didn't give my husband children. And so there's loads of emotions that go through with that. But actually, over time, and it was literally, like I said before, some days it was getting through the first hour, then it was like got to the end of the day, and gradually over time, and getting the support that I needed and having that community around me, really helped me to feel like there was a different I had a different purpose in life. And I think that's what we're all looking for, what is our purpose? And for me, not having children initially, I didn't know who I was if I couldn't have children. So I think it's definitely possible. I'm not saying it is easy. It's something that we learn to live with. And there will be moments where you'll have those waves of grief and those triggers. And what I found is when those waves have come initially, they would have got me down for a good few days, a week, pregnancy announcements. But actually, over time and learning the different strategies that I've been using to deal with it, found that actually when those waves come now, it's easy to pick myself up back up from them. And some things I think we detach from, and I think for me, I would say, and one of the biggest advice would be learning to say no. So knowing your own boundaries and what you are and aren't prepared to go to, depending on where you are in your journey. If you've decided that enough's enough, but then your friends are pregnant and they've got baby showers, it's absolutely fine to not go. You've got that permission slip, and it's difficult because there are friends and family, but actually, if it means you going, putting on a brave face, and then coming home and breaking down and finding that really difficult, we have to protect ourselves. And I've had to protect myself over these years, and finding the Dovecote and um, all the work that I do supporting people on there, as well as now the work that I do with Care Fertility. So I'm the patient support coordinator. I've developed a number of different ways in which we can support patients still going through IVF. And for me, it feels like in all of this, something positive has come out of it, because I don't want people to go through treatment and it work or not and feel that they're on their own. So for me, it was always a case of, there doesn't always have to be a silver lining, but for me, I felt like I needed a bit of a silver lining in all of this. So the question, can you have a happy and fulfilling life without children? I think it is 100% possible, but I think we go from it being project baby to start to open up the different aspects of our lives, the things that we used to do that we stopped doing because we were trying for a family. Holidays, the fact that you're perhaps not moving house because of treatment, moving jobs, all those things, just setting yourself to having little things to look forward to, I found really useful. One of the big things that we did a 17-day trip. We did a little bit of a tour of Thailand, which was something that I always wanted to do and was always on hold because of treatment. So IVF definitely dulled my sparkle over time. I would definitely say that. And it took time to get to a place where, you're enjoying life again. And it's not that it's always going to be, bright and shiny. We look at what we're going through at the moment with all the COVID, and it can be difficult. It can be really difficult. But I think knowing that you're not alone in this, and knowing that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, for me, it was what I needed, just to think that I could get through it.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kelly, for sharing all those details and for those encouraging words as well. Definitely positivity is very, very important. So huge thank you for that. And Now it is time for your questions. There are a few already. So, Kelly, are you ready for them?
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Fantastic. Happy to hear that. Okay, so the first question is, sound a real difficult journey. Did you consider donor eggs?
Um, so yeah, it was a really difficult journey, and no, I didn't consider donor eggs because when I finished treatment, I was in my early 30s, and all the advice that I'd been given from the consultants was that my egg quality and number of eggs seemed to be absolutely fine. It didn't seem to be an egg issue. So um, I did have offers from my sister to be a surrogate, but at the time, really felt that I wanted the whole experience myself. As I don't know if that sounds selfish or not, but I just kind of wanted that whole motherhood experience. And one of the things that I didn't say actually during, those 10 years is that I'm the eldest of four siblings. And in that time, I've now got 14 nieces and nephews. So that was really tough. So having to deal with my journey as well as kind of my siblings having children easily and often not planned was difficult. But for me, egg donor, no, I didn't consider it because it was never something that was put forward or considered. I always felt, because I've got immune issues and autoimmune disease, that I felt that that was the problem, not the egg issue, if that makes sense.
Of course, thank you so much. And actually, there is like a follow up. Perhaps you can add something because patient has added. I see the above person has asked the question if you consider donor eggs, as that is all fertility doctors have advised is my only option to have a child age 43, as they said there is 90% likelihood my embryos would be damaged from a chromosome basis. Anything you can advise?
Um, I think it is, I think the consultants, they're the ones with the experience with this. And I do know obviously the science that with the older you are, the less likely you're going to have a chance with your own embryos. Um, there is things that you can do if you're still wanting that biological child. Obviously, there's the genetic testing that clinics can now do. Obviously, I'm not here to um, kind of give advice, but in terms of the chromosomal abnormalities and things like that, I always say it's about what you're going to regret least. And some people that I support just aren't ready to give up their chances of being kind of a biological genetic parent to their child. There's some people who say, I'm X years, so I know that it's, the chances are quite low, so rather than trying with mine and having disappointment, i I just want a baby. So having those donor eggs is something that they're more accepting of. And there are definitely two camps: those are that find it difficult or just say no, it's not for me, and those that are completely accept and said, okay, that's what I need to do. And a patient that I first started supporting when I started at Care, she was 50 and had donor eggs. She knew that she'd met a partner later on in life, that the chance of having her own biological child were very minimal. So had donor eggs and it worked for her, and she's got a little boy now, and she was just completely over the moon with that. She just wanted a baby, and it really depends on where you are. Again, it's a grief process, having to decide to not use your own eggs and look at alternatives. That there is a grief that goes with that and a loss. So it's not an easy decision, and it's definitely one that if anybody wants to get in touch with me, I can put you in touch with people who and support that have used donor eggs and have found it to be, a positive experience, and will be very honest with you about the challenges as well. So I just think it's where you are. It's really personal decision. But the consultants are the ones that day in day out are seeing patients and have got those data and statistics.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that as well. Okay, and there is another question right here. So, were you tempted to keep asking different consultants to see if anyone had a magic answer?
Um, I, I've done a lot of research myself, in terms of the immune, because like I said, I know that I've got autoimmune issues, so it felt to me that my eggs were okay, my lining was okay. I got told I had a beautiful womb, um, and I tried the immune therapy as well with the intralipids. I just felt like if it was meant to happen, it would have happened. I know there's people that kind of have a number of cycles, 17, 18, 20 cycles. And I think it just depends on how you are as a person. And I felt emotionally battered by the stage that I did do with the miscarriages and the failed cycles, that actually we'd already spent obviously X amount, and thinking that we'd have to then go and get more. Um, I just decided that no, everything that I could try myself in terms of all the alternative therapies I've tried. Um, and I felt like with the immune therapy, that was kind of the extra bit that I'd done. Obviously, since I finished treatment, there's still things, new things that if I went back and had treatment, I could try. And people often say to me, "Are you not tempted to go back and have treatment?" And I just say no, because I think some people find it find the process okay, but I found the whole thing quite traumatic. And for me, we'd decided that actually, we'd come to the limits, and um, I think I don't know if I think I've spotted a question about kind of relationships, what impact it has on relationships. And I think for me, it was a case of I'd married my husband for my husband, not to have children. It would have been amazing to have a family. But for me, it was a case of um, maybe it's just not meant to happen. And just felt, like I said, there was just a feeling that I just knew that enough was enough.
Okay, exactly. Here's the question about the effect your relationship with your partner
Yeah.
had.
Yeah, it's really difficult because I think typically men, and I say typically, I'm making a generalization here, that men don't tend to share as much as women do, perhaps. And some of the work that I'm now doing with care and the emotional support is making sure that men are seen as an equal in this process. I at the time felt very much that I was the one going through it, and I was the one doing IVF, um, because obviously most of it's happening to you. So my so yeah, in that my husband was a huge support, and it's really difficult for both of you in this situation where you're both trying to work towards something, and it was the first thing that we tried to kind of achieve and work hard for, and it had not happened in the nicest way. And it was difficult because I remember him saying, I can give you anything in the world except from the one thing that you want. Obviously that's, and it's heartbreaking, and there's nothing that either of you can do, you know, to make it happen if it's not happening. It's really, really difficult. So um it of course it has is an impact, because at the end of the day it's something that should be a personal experience and becomes kind of a bit of a process to go through. So it's just different. So, but I would say that talking is really important. Talking it through, having those open conversations. If you can go to counselling together and you've got a good relationship with the counsellor, definitely do that. I would say, my experience and chatting to people as well. to say the difference between men and women. There's this book called Men Are Like Women Are Like Spaghetti and Men Are Like Waffles with their little boxes, and that's how it felt for me. It felt like the IVF process was, I just felt like a big bowl of spaghetti that was, everything was connected, and I'd see somebody who's pregnant and that trigger something else, and you just feel sad. And whereas men, they have, or for me, my experience in talking to the patients that I do, men tend to have little boxes. So for my husband, if he was in his work box, the infertility box wasn't open. So it was really interesting. So I would be thinking about it all the time. It would be really difficult. And for him, it was more of a logical process. And it's not always the same, you know, not all men are the same, but that's how I found it. So finding ways to open that box can be difficult because it's painful. Um, but again, it's I think he allowed me time to process my grief, and his grief will probably come as come after, kind of just protecting me. Um, so yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that, and definitely that was tough, but thank you so much. I mean, I'm sure this is helpful to lots of patients right now, so huge thanks
Yeah.
for that. Okay, of course, there are more questions right here, so let me go to the next one. So, how did you deal with people's insensitive comments, advice?
Okay, so I think over time, my responses to the insensitive comments and advice has varied depending on where I've been at, kind of on the journey emotionally, who it is that I'm talking to. But I found it useful to have a bank of responses. So people wouldn't ask such insensitive questions about any other topic, but it feels like everybody knows somebody who it's worked for, or they've got a magical cure or whatever. So um, for me, I've I've learnt over time that what works for me is to be honest with people. And quite often it makes them feel very uncomfortable when you put it back on them. But actually it's kind of, it's like a learning experience. There's so much education that needs to be done out there, and with the general population and public about asking these insensitive questions. But for me, it was a case of when we first got married and we were trying, it was like, oh no, no, not yet. To then when it started to obviously have an impact in the infertility, you used to find that really difficult. So you'd kind of deflect it onto something else. Um, but as time went on, and now when people ask, for example, because I've been open about it, a lot of people don't ask me anymore because they already know about my situation. But people say, have you got children, when they're looking to, you know, connect and find rapport? And I just say, no, unfortunately not. And I think saying no, unfortunately not, lets them know that it's not a choice. If you say no, no, it's why not? People ask those following questions. So it's about thinking what's right for you. The adoption question is a really interesting one. It's definitely something that you need to both be on the same page about, which is why it's not something that I've looked into more. And actually, we've been through, or anybody going through infertility has been through a hell of a lot. Um, to then just have the question, why don't you just adopt? There is no just about it. It's another difficult process to go through. Um, and whilst ever you're still processing that infertility is something that will live with you, whether you have a child or not. It's something that you've been through and you will always remember, and it becomes part of who you are. Um, so, like I say, having those banks of questions. I have written some articles on that actually, with some different responses that you can use. So if anybody wants a link to those, I can fish those out and send those to people. But yeah, it's difficult. It's people just think it's okay to ask them, and it's just not. But hopefully, there is started to be a little bit more of a shift. but I think it's difficult, especially with kind of well-intending parents or family members or aunties or grandparents that you might not see that often. Maybe they say, "Oh, have you not got children yet?" And you better get a move on, time's ticking, all those sorts of things. And just thinking about um, your own situation, how comfortable you feel in sharing that. And for some people, they won't want to share any of it. I know people who've not told a soul, and it's deeply personal. And you have every right not to answer those questions. So yeah.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much once again for that. Okay, next question is right here. So, do you feel sad, for example, on your trip around Thailand, that you can't share these wonderful life experiences with children?
Um, so I would say the trip around Thailand was something that I'd been wanting to do for such a long time. And it was probably the only, or the first time actually, in those 10 years at the end of it, that I was at the edge of this beautiful infinity pool overlooking the ocean with these gorgeous kind of landscapes and rocks and things. And I actually felt at peace. Um, and during the time in the fertility journey, I would say I didn't feel at peace. I felt really just all over the place. So for me, um, when we were having that experience, because it was about us and sharing those experiences, um, I didn't feel sad about it. Um, and we've gone on to do lots of lovely things that we would never have had the opportunity to do if we'd had children as well. So there are things, there are some things that you have the chance to do because you don't have children. But equally, there are still times that Christmas is can still feel tinged with sadness because it's not how I imagined it would be. Um, so there are moments, all those moments throughout, or the key events throughout the year, Mother's Day, um, Father's Day. It's more events I think I find sad, not being able to do Easter egg hunts, but because I've got nieces and nephews, my life does feel very childful, not childless. And so for me, it's I've had to, for my own sanity, I think, embrace and focus on what I do have in my life. And I think that's been the real positive to come out of this. Is actually I've always been a proactive and positive person. This was a real challenging moment that kind of tested me as a person, and for a moment it nearly won because it was really difficult. But actually now, I am able to be grateful for what I do have in my life rather than focusing on what I don't. And it took a long time to shift that mindset. But yeah, so yeah, there is sadness, but I think it's kind of it's where you put your focus. And for a time, you have to be sad. And like I said, those 3 4 days, I just wallowed and didn't really do anything else other than stay in bed for 4 days because nobody else was around. Nobody needed me. I didn't have to bother anybody. Um, but I think it's just allowing yourself to feel those feelings as well. It's really important.
Okay, thank you so much once again for sharing that. And yes, definitely every now and then it's good to have such days, I would say, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay, and there's another question here. So, did you feel very much affected of all the hormones and medication you had to take?
100% yes. Yeah, so I did feel affected by the hormones and medications. I am very sensitive to hormones anyway, so I felt like probably for I would say a good 4 years. I don't feel like the medication that I'd been on for that number of years completely left my system. Um, and in fact, after I'd had the steroids and the immune therapy, I wasn't. nobody told me about any side effects of the steroids and the immune suppressants, but actually, I for 2 years, up until the last summer, actually, I wasn't able to have gluten and dairy, because what the steroids had done was kind of affected all my gut bacteria and created allergies. So I had really bad skin, which I'd never suffered with before. Obviously, the mood, the emotional sides, but actually the medication, yeah, it does have an impact, and it can be really um, difficult to kind of deal with that. For me, I somebody got me this medicinal cookery book, and last summer when I had some time, started cooking really healthy raw food. So looking at like ginger and garlic, and really try to help my gut health. So I managed to um, repair my gut. Inside of my gut. So I can now have dairy and gluten, because not only was I not able to have children, but after the treatment, I wasn't able to eat what I want, and drink what I want. So it was um, it was frustrating because I'd never had allergies up to then. My mum was like, "Well, you've never had allergies before." I'm like, "Well, I can't look at my skin, look at my face when I have it." So, yeah, it definitely had an impact. But everybody's different. I don't know anybody else that's had a reaction in that same way. But like I say, I am super sensitive to any changes in hormones anyway, and I would say it is 100% normal to have, to feel affected by those hormones, especially the emotions as well.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much once again. And actually, there are like two questions left. However,
Okay.
if you have any, just go ahead and type it in. We will be slowly finishing,
Yeah.
so that is why I encourage you to just write your questions. And the question here, and this is very interesting, do you think that sometimes the desire to have a child is a result of social norms and influences rather than an authentic own desire? Talking about myself, after the difficulties and failures I've been experiencing during my IVF, I've started questioning whether I really want a child or I'm just influenced by how others' lives with children look like.
That is a really interesting question. And I think that is so true. Again, because I've done quite a lot of um, healing and processing of this. For me, in the story that I grew up with was that you got married, you had a baby, you went to school, you went to college, got a job, got married, you had a baby, you had a family, and had another one. Um, so in my mind, and when I talk about the grief of the loss of a life I thought I was going to have, um, the more I've unpicked that, it is the social norm to have children, 100%. Which is why when you don't have children, you get the questions. And if you just say no, people that would you not like them? So I do think it is, and I think the longer that you're on the time to think about the decision to have children, it's not like it's just happened. So um 100%. I totally relate. I totally relate to that, because I got to the point where I was really struggling with the depression and anxiety, and I read this book that was called "Just Get On With It," and it said, "What if you got the thing that you've always wanted, and it still doesn't make you happy?" And for me, that was a light bulb moment, because for nearly 10 years, I tried to achieve having a child, and obviously had all the treatment and gone through all the emotions, thinking that that was going to make me happy, when actually I could have had a child and it might not have been exactly what I thought. It was kind of, like you said, exactly there, the social norm. Um, so I think I've definitely had those questions, and I think particularly in the world that we live in now, you just question whether or not um, how easy it would be, the worries that I'd have if I had my own children. Right now with all the the pandemic and everything going on. So I think that is a completely valid point, and I think it's okay to come to the decision actually where you think, I don't have children and it's okay. And for me, that was where I got to. Um, yeah, I don't have children and I'm okay. It doesn't define me anymore. It's kind of it's made me who I am and the experience that I've had. But it isn't. It's just part of who I am. I feel much bigger than just the the label of being infertile. I don't associate that anymore. So yeah, but really interesting question. Thank you for asking.
Yes, thank you so much. Definitely, as you mentioned, interesting, and thank you for helping out with this as well. And well, there is another question here. Okay. I have opted for donor egg IVF mainly because I have one child born via IVF. He is now at the age where he constantly asks me when I will give him a sibling. The guilt has driven me to try donor eggs. I'm 46. I'm okay to try this, but don't know when enough will be enough, as my decision is driven by guilt and my desire to make my son happy. Not sure how to deal with this.
Okay, that's a difficult one. Uh, uh, that, like you say, the guilt and desire to make your son happy, and that kind of links with what I said. If you did have a sibling, would that make him happy? Um, I think you need to possibly be asking the questions about where you are with this. I mean, having a child through IVF is a huge blessing, and I'm sure you're super grateful for having him. And I know that parents that have one child, do sometimes feel the guilt for not having another. But equally, it's about yes, yeah, it's about what you're gonna whatever what you're gonna regret least. If you have another child and you end up resenting that child because you've not had it for your own reasons, but for your son, for your other son. I think it's a lot to go through, and the whole donor egg situation as well. It sounds like you've already got a child with your own eggs, and that adds it's a different dimension, and you might find that you feel differently about possibly differently about it. I don't know. um I think you need to ask the question whether or not it's something that you want to do for you. I don't think it can be about your son. um it's really tricky, really tricky. Because I see people who are struggling with um, secondary infertility, so they're struggling for a second child, and the grief and the loss, and the emotional impact is they feel the same as when they didn't have any children. The loss is a loss. They wanted a family, so I think it's going back to what you wanted and what you'd imagined. And to put yourself through all that, is a big decision. So head, heart, and gut. What is that saying to you? Check in with yourself. Um, you can tell your son how much he's loved and how special he is. There's some lovely books out there about um, IVF, and the stories that you can tell about how they were conceived in a special way, and you can make them feel very special. And so yeah, I hope that helps.
Excellent. Thank you. And there was an answer. Thank you. It is difficult, but listening to you is helping.
Oh,
Huge
thank
thank you.
you, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you as well. And there is another question. Okay, so I read in your bio, Kelly, that you are an NLP practitioner. How has that helped you in your journey?
So, as well as the EFT, the NLP really helped with kind of the limiting beliefs about myself. So, it's possible with the NLP to, it's a bit like reprogramming how we think about things. So, it's when I talked about some of the tools and strategies that I've used to help me deal with my childlessness and coming to the end of the journey. These are some of the things that I use. So, for example, one little thing that I used very early on quite a lot would be the anchoring technique. So, whenever you had a thought about um, kind of your treatment or the feeling, then you would kind of just pinch your thumb and your finger there, and you'd try and think about a really positive experience. So again, it's just trying to, whenever you think about it, you anchor it to something that's got a happier memory. Um, so for me, it was really useful in terms of temporarily. When all my nieces and nephews were being born, I found that quite difficult. But the NLP helped for me to temporarily just to disassociate a little bit and protect myself. So there's lots of information out there about NLP and the different tools and the different techniques that kind of, you know, involved with it and the different things that you could use. But for me, it was a case of the quite practical activities that you can try and do to deal with some of that loss and processing the grief. So one of the really useful things for me was the circle of influence, circle of concern. So we've always got two circles. There's one in the middle, circle of influence, all the things that we can do something about. And in the bigger circle, we have all those things, and you can write them down. All the things that are worrying you that you have no control over. And one of the things this is something that's really helped me over time is that if you focus on the things that you can control, rather than worrying about things you can't control, then that circle of influence tends to grow. Is wherever we're putting our energy. So if we put our energy into the things we can control, it has such a beneficial impact on our general well-being, energy, sleep. So NLP would definitely recommend having a little look at that to see the other techniques that you can use to help. But for me, I felt like I needed something practical. Like I said, the counselling was useful, but I felt like there needed to be a bit more in dealing with some of those thoughts, emotions, like I said before, feeling like a failure, all those things. I wasn't a failure, but that's how I felt. So the NLP really helped to shift that and to reframe it into something more positive.
Perfect. Thank you so much once again. And actually, there's another question. Okay, it's just popped out here. Okay. Not only do I fear never being a mother, but also over time never being grandmother. Also, I have no nieces or nephews. How do you feel about the grandmother thing?
I again can relate to the fear of being not being a mother. Um, I wouldn't say that I've feared never being a grandmother, but I do think that as my nephews and nieces get older and my siblings start to become grandparents, I feel that that might be another wave of grief and something that I need to process. I think, there's different little milestones that other people will be reaching. There's so many different life events that you feel like you've missed out on already, like the first day of school and university and all those different things again that you imagine life to be like. So being a grandmother, at the moment I don't have any friends that are grandparents, but I do know lots of grandparents and friends that are grandparents. They're not kind of immediate family, and look, just see how much they dote on their grandchildren. So I'm sure there will be a moment when that will be difficult, and again time to have time to process that. But I think in all of this, something that I've not really mentioned is the acceptance and letting go of your dream of not being a mother initially is really tough. But by doing the grief work and processing that and looking at the different things you can do and gradually just starting to build your life back up again, you do find a level of acceptance. And for me, I would say that's where I've been able to be at, with accepting that that's not part of my journey, and that it doesn't hurt in the same way as it used to hurt. I wouldn't say it doesn't hurt anymore, because there'll always be moments that and little triggers, but actually that's not part of my journey, and there are other things that I can do. Um, but it's difficult because it's all about our purpose. And if you've always imagined being a parent, then that's difficult to let go of. So, yeah, I think the answer to the question is, how do I feel about it? I feel like it'll probably hit me a little later on. But again, it's finding finding a sense of peace and knowing that I've done everything at the time that I was prepared to do. Um, so
Perfect.
yeah.
Thank you so much. And actually, I believe that was our last question. However, there are lots of comments and I need you to see them. Okay,
Oh,
so
bless you.
there are those they sorry, there they are. Your thoughtfulness and insights are invaluable. I would appreciate the link with the infertility bank of responses. Shall I send you my email through the DAP code? And if you could perhaps just add the that your email address, of course, so if anyone would like to get in touch with you, they will be able to do it.
Yeah, I mean, if people want to also, the face on my Facebook page, the Dovecote Childless Support Organisation as well, you can message me through there,
Perfect.
or I've just popped my email address on there
Yes.
as well, so you can. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, all the social media, so you can feel free just to send me a message if you've got any other questions or would like anything else.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And actually, there are more comments right here. The patient already knows your name, I believe, but I think you're
Oh,
an amazing woman and I admire you so much for speaking to us and giving your advice. If you could provide the name of your website, I would love to contact you as I'm deeply
oh,
struggling at the moment. So
oh,
you have the email, and of course, you can always get in touch with Kelly, as I am sure she will be able to help you out a bit. Not question, but I just wanted to say thank you for your honesty and how difficult this journey can be. There's another one. And here,
oh,
what you
thank
have been
you.
through. It's really brave with a lot of courage. Most of women will not be able to go through this and still be positive and trying to help others. You are amazing.
Oh, thank you.
And there's one more. Thank you so much for sharing your personal experience. You're an amazing, strong woman and a guest. And of course, a great example. Sorry, there's the follow up link without warning, wanting. Sorry. And well, Kelly, thank you so much. And thank you, Caroline, for ever so useful session. All the best to all the ladies of the group. So, well, we definitely couldn't agree more, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Kelly, again, thank you so much for your support. You've been excellent, and this gives some positive thoughts to some of the patients, I am sure. So huge thanks for that. And well, is there anything else you would like to add?
Just thank you for all the lovely comments, and thank you, Caroline, for inviting me on to do this session. It's not an easy one. I think with IVF, like I said before, it's we don't go into it thinking that we're not going to get our baby at the end of it. So um, I'm always a little bit nervous about chatting about kind of when it is unsuccessful, but I do genuinely feel like we need to talk about it. You know, it's something that is really difficult, but you know the statistics are there that you know most cycles are unsuccessful, so it's something that we definitely really need to talk about more. So thank you for listening in, and really just the way that you've engaged with everything today. It's been lovely, and I think you know everybody gives me strength to carry on talking about my journey, because um, if I can help just one person through you know through the experience that I've been through, then it feels like it's been worth something. So thank you so much. It's yeah,
Perfect.
thank
Thank
you
you
for
so much
joining
as
me.
well. this is definitely helpful, and we are really, really glad that you have agreed to simply be here with us tonight. But also, I need to mention that Kelly is also our partner and ambassador. So, from all our team, well, thank you so much for supporting this whole initiative. It's definitely good to have you with us on board, and I definitely hope we will be able to just have another session, and we can discuss. There are so many topics we can discuss, and that will help, I'm sure.
Oh,
Perfect.
thank
And
you.
thank you. And also, I just want to remind everyone that, of course, this has been recorded. Therefore, within the next few days, you will be able to watch this again. And if you would like to know when it is uploaded, all you need to do is subscribe to our YouTube channel. And that way, you will be notified when the new video is uploaded. Plus, all those events you can find on our myivfanswers.com. The link you already received. This is the link where you will be able to find all the Kelly event with us as well. And plus, I would like to remind everyone that we are having another event tonight with Dr. Yon from IVF Spain. So I hope you can join us also at 8 p.m. Sorry, this time it's a different time.
Mm.
Sorry, just used to it. 8 p.m. But today it's 7:30 p.m. UK time. So I hope you will be able to simply join us as well. And well, that's it from me today. And Kelly, huge thank you. All the comments say it for itself, right? I mean, it has been really, really good to have you with us tonight.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye bye.
Exactly. Take care of you, all of you, and bye bye.
Bye bye.